Eldon McGraw with Riff It Up, and today my guest is Randy Matthews, a singer-songwriter. How you doing, Randy?
I'm doing good. How are you, Eldon?
Doing well. Well, we've known each other for a long time, of course. I think we were just talking earlier, maybe 89, 90 range here in
Yeah,
Lansing.
I think so. But you were already out of LCC at that time, right?
Yes, I was.
But Bonnie was working there?
Yes.
She wasn't a student, but she was working there.
Right.
So, yeah.
So we'll talk about the past. Let's talk about what's going on nowadays. You've been a singer-songwriter a long time, but the last decade or so, you've really branched off into that world. To give people a little bit of background of your last decade of singer-songwriter or the process.
Well, I guess the main thing about my process was getting more rehearsal time in, like really trying to really know my songs that I was writing and kind of hone in on my kind of style, I guess, if I could say that, and give it sort of my personality take on it, kind of like create the personality that you see here, and be able to sing like that. You know, a big part of the learning curve was playing the guitar. I'm not a natural at playing guitar or singing, and almost kind of by accident did that kind of change for me after I punctured a lung.
Oh, really? So how did that affect? I mean, you obviously had some recovery time. So how long did that take to
Well,
get
up
back
until
into
that,
music?
yeah, up until that point, I had been a smoker for 42 years, so I never had a good voice. I never could get it in pitch tone. You know, I was a hacker. You know, but I smoked incessantly, and I punctured one of my lungs one night and fell over into my rib cage, which clogged one of the lobes in my lungs, and I ended up in the hospital and for 3 days, and I just didn't feel like being a smoker after I got out. So
How'd that affect your voice?
it changed it 100%. I all of a sudden could actually carry a tune, at least a little bit. I know I'm not, you know, really pitch perfect ever, but it also, I think it helped bring my personality out through the way I sing as well, even if it's not pitch perfect.
Ure. So if someone really have never seen you live play, how would you describe your sound? I know it's hard to describe sometimes, but how would you describe it?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm trying to be more direct and make eye contact with my audience so that hopefully they think that I'm singing to them. It is one thing that I've been working on, trying hard to work on anyway, and make it so that they can hopefully relate to the words I'm singing more intimately, I guess.
So when you write songs, you've been writing songs a long time. Real quick, when did you kind of start writing songs?
Well, I started writing songs when I moved out here from New York City with my new wife and baby daughter. Debbie had such a beautiful voice that I wanted her to learn to play guitar. So I took up guitar at like 27 for the first time and started playing guitar. And we didn't get very much done during her lifetime, but we did get one piece done that I wrote, and it was for an animation that I wrote called Down at the Hideaway. And it was with it was a claymation, and the song was Down at the Hideaway, and I had Debbie sing it for this claymation that we did.
So that started your songwriting kind of career, right?
Yeah.
And then when did you really dive into it? So you had that launch, but when do you feel like you start hitting your stride where you're really consistently writing?
Probably after I took the last break from Fade to Black.
Which is right, like
Yeah, that would have been
quite a few years ago.
2010.
Yeah, sounds
I think
about right. Yeah,
I think it's
right.
about when. I mean, I was getting more songs played on our albums, but the tone of my songs were different than what Fade to Black was, and
Yeah, and Fade to Black for everyone is a band that you and I were in for many years,
Right.
a couple different periods of time. So
Right.
yeah, you were obviously a songwriter in the band among all of us.
yeah, we were all songwriters, but my style started to change in the middle of it, sort of in a way, and I just didn't think it would work well. And so really at first I didn't plan to become a singer-songwriter what I really was looking for was another group of people to play with, but no one else wanted to play with me
Right.
until Kathy recently, I guess. Or something.
It worked out. It worked out.
Yeah, it worked out.
So when you write songs, take me through your process as a fellow songwriter.
Okay.
Do you think about the melody? Do you come up with the chords on the guitar? Does it magically appear at the same time? Tell me what your process is, or is it always different?
It's always different. But there are kind of two main ways of which I do it. For example, one of the songs that we did today, I thought about how to write the song based on an image I had of, well, in this case, it would have been Robin Williams. And I wanted to write a song called, I wrote a song called Do You Realize? And I wanted to write a song that pictured what Robin Williams might think about himself when he wasn't on camera, when he was like home alone with himself.
Interesting.
Other times I have melodies. I've got hundreds of melody chord progressions on these. Well, I don't smoke anymore, but I used to put them on tube carton containers. And so they're just filled with melodies that are waiting for the lyrics that go with those melodies.
And then lyrically, do you base on some poetry initially, or do you always go right into song mode, where you get a verse, chorus, bridge? What's your technique?
Yeah, another way is that I have a thought in my head of something that I'm trying to express or think that I would want to say to someone. And so I'll start by writing some poetry based on that, and then I'll go through 5 or 6 drafts of that, you know. Usually I write too much to start with, and so it's a progression of subtraction, basically.
Right.
Of honing the poetry down to more and more, and hopefully along the way, as I'm thinking about what I'm trying to say in the song, a melody will come to mind, you know.
Do you do first person writing? Do you do characters? Is it a combination? What's your perspective in your songwriting?
I think almost all of it is first person.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of if I have written anything that it's not first person.
So it's all inspired by some experiences or people you've had in your life, or
Right,
things like that?
or some maybe not. It's first person, but it might not necessarily be me.
Gotcha.
Singing it.
Right.
It might be someone else that I'm picturing singing it or saying it.
Let's talk about the live performance. I know you play some shows, of course, and what's the preparation it takes to get your live performance ready? Like, give me that pre-performance regimen.
10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Basically. I've finally gotten to a point, for the most part, that I know my material well enough that I don't have to really prep for it, I don't think. Having been trained as an actor, I learned diaphragmatic breathing, and I kind of do that all the time, rather than actually regimen myself through that. I just have always breathed from the diaphragm, and it keeps your voice aligned, I guess
Sure.
might be the way to say it.
So you talked about your acting background. You're quite the artist, right, throughout your life. It's beyond a musician. Well, no, you've had some...
On the performance side of things,
Sure,
I'm not too branched out in other types of.
Well, what I'm saying is you have more than just music
More than
in
just
your
one,
life.
sure.
You've been
but
an actor.
most artists are that
course,
way.
of
If
course.
you think about it, I mean,
Yeah.
look at Dennis Quaid. I just saw John Mellencamp.
Yeah.
Is a painter.
Yeah, he's
and
great
he's
painter.
got an exhibit that's going on the road, I guess.
Yeah. that
So
is true.
anyway,
yeah.
but yeah.
So a little bit about your background of your acting. I know many years ago you were in New York. Maybe a little story about that.
Yeah, well, when I was at LCC taking theater classes, there came an opportunity that LCC would not pay us, but sponsor us in a van load of actors to go down to Nashville, Tennessee. And what they were having down in Nashville is what's called cattle calls. And so what they do is they give you assign you a number, and you have to come in and you give a 30-second monologue. And if you sing as well, you have to give some sheet music to the pianist who accompanies you, and you sing for as long as the accompanist wants to hear whatever you're singing. And so out in the audience there, this was in the Grand Ole Opry Hotel, as a matter of fact.
Nice.
Out in the auditorium are thousands, well, maybe 1,000 casting directors from all different theaters around the country, right? And then so after you do your audition, they each have a room in the hotel with a placard outside, and you walk around and you look for your number of the theater company that wants to give you a call back, get a second taste of you to see if they want you to become part of their company or not.
What year was this when you were doing this, roughly?
This would have been 1979.
Wow.
1980, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, 1980.
Wow, that's
so
awesome.
I was just 19.
Yeah.
And anyway, I had 2 callbacks that day.
Okay.
One was from the Cherry County Playhouse, which used to be up in Traverse City.
Yeah, I was thinking Traverse City, yeah.
Some people may know it was Bob Crane and Pat Paulson were
Bob
partners
Crane.
in that venture.
Crane was in
Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, and Pat was a comedian and ran for president, right? Supposedly.
Right. He was on Laugh-In.
Right, that's right.
But anyway, so I had that callback, and I had another callback from the National Shakespeare Company. Mm-hmm. But the National Shakespeare Company didn't want me for their touring company. They had a touring company, but they also had a conservatory. And so they wondered if I was interested in coming to New York, and upstate they had a summer camp, basically, where they trained you in theater, in not just Shakespeare, but all theaters.
Sure.
And so I had the choice of doing an internship at the Traverse City, at the Cherry County Playhouse that was up in Traverse City, or going to New York for the summer at least, and sort of nominally study Shakespeare.
Yeah, that's nice.
So I did that for a summer, and then the guy who ran the National Shakespeare Conservatory, his name was Philip Meister, and he looked just like his brother, who is Al Lewis.
Okay, yep.
From the Munsters.
Yep, right.
Anyway.
Well, didn't you, when you were in New York, didn't you room with an actor that you told me at one time that was in some big series or a couple films?
Oh, no, I didn't. I was in the, Vince D'Onofrio and I have the same first film credit on the IMDb database.
Right.
It was called, I can't even remember. It was a really terrible, awful thing. But yeah, I used to pal around with him, you know, when we weren't on set or after that film was over.
And then you had weren't you in a dance scene in a Cotton Club or something?
Yeah, I was in the Cotton Club as an
Coppola.
extra.
Yeah, back in, where was that filmed?
That was filmed in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And they used to pick us up by the busloads. There was probably at least 500 extras for various different scenes in the Cotton Club. Yeah. And they used to pick us up at a certain place in, I think, maybe Madison Square Garden area. At like 5:30 in the morning, and bus us out to Brooklyn to they're called sound studios. There are these huge warehouses where they build whole cities inside of them. Right. You know, to make them look like they're.
Yeah. I just did the Warner Brothers tour out in L.A.
Right.
So, yeah.
So you know how big they are.
They're huge.
These ones happen to be owned by Bill Cosby, actually.
Oh wow.
By the way, and so yeah, I got to see. I can't think of it. Fred Gwynn was in it, in the Cotton Club.
Right.
And he used to walk around with his tennis shoes as if they were slippers. He wouldn't even put his whole feet in them.
Big guy, wasn't he?
Huh? Yeah, he was a big guy. That's true. And Richard Gere, when he wasn't on set, he'd go over to the piano in the Cotton Club and he'd kind of play these mournful kind of melody type tunes for a little bit. And Diane Lane was always bitching at Francis Ford Coppola, put me in more scenes, because the way you make more money as an actor depends on how many lines you have.
Fair enough.
So she was always dogging poor Francis.
Trying to cash in.
Right.
So let's talk about, back to your music. One of the things I think is interesting that I think a lot of people would be interested in is you were also a club owner back in the 90s. You had kind of these independent clubs where musicians from all over the country would come and play. Of course, a lot of regional. Yeah, as an owner of those clubs, that music scene from the 90s, because it was a great era, as we know, we grew up in that era. What was your kind of thoughts about that time period as a club owner here in Lansing?
Yeah, what did I have? I had one down at the Hideaway,
Yeah,
or the Hideaway,
the Hideaway, right?
right?
You had something on
And
Michigan
then
Avenue.
the Ibex Sings.
Ibex Sings, yes. Right.
Yep. I invented that whole animal doing a verb thing.
Yes.
You know, the Ibex Sings.
Right, yeah. So let's talk about the future of your music. So you obviously have played some shows as a singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
What do you see for yourself? I mean, what's your kind of goals for yourself right now?
Well, right now, having made my first ever demo, and I'm not even sure why it's taken me this long. Probably because I didn't have enough confidence in myself to appear. It's taken a lot of years of open mics for me to feel comfortable enough. I remember I was petrified getting up on stage, which is weird because I've been on stage as an actor probably 1,000 times in my life.
And
Maybe
a
not
musician
quite that many.
too.
Well, yeah, but surrounded by a band.
Sure,
you know,
true.
it's kind of a different deal.
A loud band too that covered up.
Yeah, a loud band that covered up all my mistakes.
Right.
You know, and it's like, man, they can't hear that I missed
That's
this chord.
That's right.
So, so what I'd like to do, I mean, part of my thought is I want to get my songs sounding good enough for myself. So part of my thought is to send them to other more established singers, you know, more famous kind of people that want to say, oh yeah, I want to do that song, buy it off me.
Right.
Is partially one goal.
Yeah.
But the other is to feel comfortable enough that to get a bar owner or a venue of some type to say, yeah, I can risk, you know, maybe hiring that guy and having him come in and do some music.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you being here today. It's
Yeah.
been a great interview and get to know more about you, even though I've known you forever, but it's been a lot of fun. So
Right.
thanks a lot, Randy. Appreciate it.
A lot of things I don't tell
That's
other
right.
people.
That's right.